which will take place at Uganda Museum on Friday, July the 13th, starting at 5:30 p.m. Come all and identify with this noble cause of education.
Radio 1. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio and I'm the host, Edmond. On Spectrum tonight, we campaign to eliminate torture in Uganda. What are the challenges ahead now that Parliament has put in place a law? On April the 26th, 2012, human rights activists jubilated when Parliament passed a prohibition and prevention of torture bill and sent it to the head of state who must assent to it before it can become law. Heinous acts of torture have been documented and reported to human rights agencies, including the Uganda Human Rights Commission. The main culprits are state agencies, that is the army, police, and the prison service, according to findings. The 2011 Human Rights Report showed that torture accounted for 34% of all abuses, up from 28.3% in the year before. Even at the time of those campaigns against torture, government was busy rejecting claims that it was running safe houses and using torture against Ugandans. Civil society organizations teamed up with the Uganda Human Rights Commission to step up the campaigns, prompting Dora East MP Wilfred Nwagaba to present a private member's bill, which was accepted by Parliament, leading to the new act. Some human rights activists are, however, not happy that President Museveni has delayed to send to the bill, and there is a lot of speculation that he might have simply rejected it and chosen to stay silent. So now to look at the latest campaign aimed at reminding the President about the urgency of the law, as we also remind ourselves about the dangers associated with administering torture. Our guest tonight, Hon Stephen Bakka Mugabi, Vice Chairman of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. You most welcome Hon Bakka Mugabi.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Mrs. Roselyn Karugonjo SEGAWA, Director of Monitoring and Inspection at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. You most welcome.
Good evening, listeners and viewers.
I'm also joined by Ms. Patricia Nduru, Senior Human Rights Officer at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. You most welcome, Patricia.
Thank you.
Can you give us a background to this bill, Roselyn?
This bill, efforts to have this bill go far back as 2004 or even before that. But in 2004 is when the Uganda Human Rights Commission started making recommendations to Parliament to pass a law specifically prohibiting torture. We made the recommendation for several years. Around 2008, Honorable Stephen Bakka said the Parliament would need help with drafting this bill. When that was mentioned, civil society organizations had already formed a coalition against torture way back, and this coalition against torture, led by the African Center for Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, got the civil society together, and together with us drafted some of the early drafts on the bill. It took quite a long while getting this bill to where it is. At this point, really, we can only, hope to take it forward. We can't lament so much about the delay. We are very happy that Parliament passed it. We are happy that Honorable Nwagaba, put it on, brought it in as a private member's bill. We are at this point, we are happy that we've come this far, but it has been a collective effort of many Ugandans, of not just the Human Rights Commission, but civil society organization, the victims of torture themselves, and most importantly, Parliament.
Well, but it's stuck at the steps of State House. Will it eventually become law?
I believe it will become law. I think that if we advocate well, I believe that it will become law. I am very hopeful that it would become law.
Patricia, why do you think the president has not signed it yet? He's busy or what?
I think that's a very subjective question. Apparently, we had a week where we were commemorating a day against torture, and one of the things that was pointed out was there's a process in Parliament when the first Parliamentary Council is supposed to consider and fine-tune the bill before it's presented to the President, and that step by then hadn't yet been done. And so there were strategies proposed in taking that forward to see that this process from the first Parliamentary Council to the next stage moves on. Yeah.
So is it an urgent thing, or is it something that can wait? We can wait another 2 years.
It's urgent. It's urgent. If you consider what the bill proposes, why should there be a bill, the incidences of torture, the effects of torture? It's something that is of prime importance that should be taken forward. And at the end of the day, the effects of torture, what's the human face of torture?
We talk about the substance of that at some stage. Hon Bakka Mugabi, how important is this bill to us to trust?
Well, first of all, I wish to acknowledge the thanks from the Human Rights Commission for the expeditious way in which we handled the bill, but also to thank the Human Rights Commission for cooperating and facilitating Parliament to ensure that the private member, Honorable Mwagaba, got all the help he wanted and he needed to ensure that the bill came to the light of the day. As a committee, we did our part. We handled the bill expeditiously, and I can report that this is one of the bills that didn't attract any controversies, both in the committee and on the floor of the House. Actually, I'm the one who presented it on behalf of the chairman, and it's one bill that never attracted any debate. It was just a bill that everyone agreed with, and they said we must pass it as soon as possible. So it passed without any major amendments, and all the proposals as brought by the drafters of the bill and the principles therein were passed. What I know is that this is a very important bill. It is a bill that improves our profile as a country on issues of observing human rights and on issues of governance. You remember when the President read it as one of the bills that had been passed in the first session, there was an applaud, not only from the MPs but even the donor community. And everywhere we have been, it seems it has already been flashed on the net that we have passed this bill. Most countries are already aware that this bill was passed by Parliament. It's already improving our credentials in that area. So it's a very important bill. As to the delay of the President to sign it, I think there should not be a cause for alarm. The President knows how important this bill is, how interested the civil society is, and how the community received it. There is a lot of enthusiasm and hope in this bill to curtail incidences of torture in the country. So the President is aware, but he, as you said, probably is busy. But
he's a busy man.
He's a busy man, that's the truth. So we hope he appends his signature sooner than later to ensure that we start implementing the
one morning or evening he says this one, he says this one must be signed before I do anything else.
Yeah.
So Roselyn, give us a profile of torture in this country. How bad is the vice?
The vice is prevalent enough to have topped the kind of complaints we receive at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. If you look at our report, the trends show that it has been on the rise. We note that it was kind of low for the last 5 years. It was kind of low. It was up into, it was highest, let me give maybe more than 6 years, around 2004, 2005, 2006, went on the rise in 2007, kind of leaped up in 2008 and 9, went a bit down in 2010, but shot up again in 2011. I mean, 34.8%, or I could round it off to 35% of the people who come to the Uganda Human Rights Commission to complain are complaining about that.
Right. So who does these bad things to you?
I mean, it's a whole list of
let's talk about this case. You know that the government does that.
Yeah, it is torture, by the way, in the bill is both by state actors and non-state actors.
Who's the worst culprit?
In our report, police had the most complaints. It was, of course, followed by private individuals. And then, of course, the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the Rapid Response Unit, which was closed up,
baptized,
local government, Uganda Prison Service, education institutions, and even private companies. So those form most of the perpetrators of torture.
Is the government committed to ending it?
I think the government should be committed to ending it. The Human Rights Commission was formed, was established
many years ago.
Many years ago by the
curve is going
government. The curve can be explained by many factors.
Media reportage.
It's media reportage. People now know that the Human Rights Commission is there to have these cases, so that could be the curve. And if you are to ask maybe the average person on the street, some of them have not undergone torture, and their issues are different, and maybe their issues are socio-economic. It's healthcare facilities, it's education for their children, it's food, basic needs and shelter. So
housing. It's still a good government. It cares for its people. It doesn't torture them that bad. Talk to us, Patricia, about victims of torture. What kind of people normally are targeted or fall victim?
If I use the gender analysis, mostly it's men who report incidents of torture, and those fewer women really report incidents of torture, and I would not particularly say that either it streams across divide. That means it can be anyone from maybe a trader to someone who's involved in politics to someone who's involved it can come right down to an individual, maybe at a district level, and someone else tortures you. So it's a whole range of people who have been tortured, and the remarkable distinguishing factor is that it's in form of the gender analysis, where mostly men.
Well, but traditionally it's men that are at the forefront. We have bigger men's prisons than women prisons, so that's a socio-economic social factor.
Men at the forefront, but statistics also tell us, I think, women have a bigger percentage in this country.
Well, let's look at the context of the bill. Honorable Bakka Mugabi, what does the bill say exactly?
The bill is very, very elaborate. First of all, it creates personal criminal responsibility for the perpetrators. This idea, for example, for the government agencies that has been blamed on orders from above, we have tried to create a personal criminal responsibility for those who are involved in acts of torture. And the success of this bill will really depend on the sensitization. The officers in these government agencies like the police, UPDF, prisons should know that it is no longer an excuse to say I got orders from above. We are going to hold you criminally responsible. And that goes a long way in answering the question you asked, is the government willing to stop? I think, as I said, sensitization is going to be very important, because if the officers, the junior officers, because they are ordered, do this, do the other, and then when you ask them why they did it, they will tell you we got orders from above. If they can know that it's going to be them, we are not going to look for the orders from above. The orders from above will be also answered at that level, but you who did the act, the real act, you are going to be held responsible. If they can know that, and if we can sensitize our people to know that, then the decline is definitely going to be achieved. But the bill also now goes further to to go out to the private individuals. Private individuals who are perpetrators and who are involved in acts of torture. Again, sensitization comes in. You will see that with time, if the bill has started being implemented, you realize that the complaints which come in may not even be very much on the government side, because now people will know that if I'm abused, if I'm pressured by an individual and I go and report, there are remedies, legal remedies which I can get. I can get redress from the courts of law, and there is a law to hold those people, individual persons, in homes, women torturing children, the men torturing their wives. And if you look at the definition of torture, it is elaborate to include even behavior. Exactly. So if people can be sensitized on that, then you'll see the incidences that will come in. First of all, there will be a reduction, but also those that will be reported will be reflecting both the government side and the individual, the private side, because right now most of the cases that come in are from the government side, because people know it's only the government which can compensate you. Yes. But now an individual will go to the length of selling your property to compensate the person who has been tortured. All those are provided for in the bill, and then of course we provide for the offences in the bill and the nature of torture and the nature, the offences, and all that. We have the bill here. The ladies can give me more details. Okay. But it is elaborate. The most interesting part about it is that we are not going to listen to people who are going to say, I was ordered to do ABCD. We are going to hold you criminally responsible. And we are going out to the homes, to individual people in companies, private companies, for those people who are perpetrating torture. And even concealment of torture is now a crime. You know about someone being tortured and you don't report, that is a crime under the bill. So we can hold you responsible if you didn't report a crime happening in a neighborhood, if you knew about it. All that is yes.
Well, listeners, this is Spectrum Radio. Tonight, the campaign to eliminate torture in Uganda. What are the challenges ahead now that Parliament has put in place a law? Our guests tonight, Hon Stephen Bakka Mugabi, Vice Chairman of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, Mrs. Roselyn Karugonjo SEGAWA, Director Managing and Inspection at the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and Ms. Patricia Nduru, Senior Human Rights Officer at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We will be calling at some stage and contribute to this discussion. Roselyn, can you give us a better outline of how torture happens with private individuals?
Okay, I just want to clarify something. People won't be arrested for not reporting torture as such. Yes. It's those who have authority over those that are torturing. The supervisors who do not investigate or do anything about torture would be held liable. For example, if you're an officer in charge of a police station, a prison, name it, where torture is occurring and you don't do anything about it, you are an authority and you don't do anything, you don't investigate, you don't bring the perpetrator to book, you will also be criminally responsible. In terms of ways in which private actors can commit torture, you know that we've had lots of torture from non-state actors. The LRA, for instance, the maiming, the cutting of limbs, that's a form of torture by non-state actors. LRA is not government, it's another group, but they're meting out torture and other ill treatment on the public. Then we have cases of, we've had at the Human Rights Commission, a case where somebody affluent in society mobilized people to beat up another in mob justice, and meted out torture on this person on suspicion of having maybe stolen something, and the person used their affluent position to make sure, to ensure that torture is meted out on an individual. Those are some of the examples of private capacity. Then we also have security guards who also sometimes mete out a lot of torture. You find because because they are armed. He or she fights with their partner, and and just uses, because they have the gun at
security guards.
They have that, and they decide to, mete out torture and ill treatment on a person. Or if they are investigating cases of, if say somebody stole and the security guard is trying to establish who's responsible, they could also mete out torture to extract confessions. So private individuals also do torture.
How about workplaces? Is it right?
Yes, even in the workplaces. I think some years back the press highlighted a case where an Indian national was making their domestic help, made them lick a carpet. That's certainly ill treatment. That's some cruel, degrading treatment, which is also covered by the bill.
What would happen in that case?
Of course, the sentences are there. They are not. There is a difference between torture and ill treatment. That perhaps could be, ill treatment.
Torture is what? Persistent behavior.
Torture has its definition.
Yes.
It's a means. Let me read from the Act. An act or omission by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person by or at the instigation of or with the consent of any person, whether public or other official. It's mainly to obtain information, to punish that person for what they think they have committed, intimidating or coercing the person or any other person to do or refrain from doing any act. It can be, it can be a threat. It has, a wide definition. The threat of imminent death.
Right.
It can be also psychological, and many other forms.
What are the common ones in the private, by private individuals?
I think I mentioned the ones by private. Is like mob justice, cruel inhuman treatment, as I talked about, licking the carpet, making people work without pay. Going to, maybe asking people to work, but they don't have to eat. They don't eat. You make people work for 8 hours. They can't eat anything. Or you deny them.
Tying the children with ropes, tie them on the tree to punish them. After administering several kibokos.
Some parents do that?
Yes.
Where is that common?
It is common in many homes. It is there.
Villages?
Yeah. Especially the stepmoms. They do it. Get the kid, cane the kid, tie the kid on the ropes, and on the tree. Maybe stealing sugar.
Child steals a teaspoon?
Yes, a tips, or maybe 1,000 shillings to go and buy sweets, and then it attracts a lot of kibokos and canes and all that. It happens to the extent of banning them. You have been seeing these issues in the press. It happens, all that is torture.
The definition of torture takes the aspect of a punishment. So I'm just pointing, as he's giving those examples, this is like a punishment that has, you deserve this punishment because you did A, B, C, and D. But the nature of the punishment is so extreme that it causes such
disproportionate.
Exactly. It starts as a punishment and then to something else.
Sometimes it's to extract information or a confession.
Especially for the state.
It's to get information.
Or they keep snakes in some of these places.
They bring snakes and tell you, don't give us this information, these snakes will come for you. Or even crocodiles.
By the government?
This one by some states.
There's one we had in the civil.
By some states. I don't know if Uganda.
Let's talk about our own beloved country. Do they do this?
I've had instances of snakes in the safe houses. I'm not sure if they have been there, but I've not been there myself. The other time we asked the Human Rights Commission whether the safe houses still exist, and they said they have not found any lately.
And these men who carry around, they go home with a straight chair and say, darling, serve me with you.
Sweetheart. And they have a smile on them when they have been administered. Administering torture to Ugandans. Yeah. But mostly the state does it to extract information. It's an investigation. Sometimes they are dummies, but you wouldn't know because they are distant, and they tell you if you don't give information, And cobra will come.
And the crocodiles?
And the crocodiles, sometimes...
What do they feed them on in between the time?
The state has the machinery to do everything they can, including feeding crocodiles to threaten fellow Ugandans.
Sounds like a movie. The last man I knew about used to feed his enemies to crocodiles was General Idi. I mean, he had a long title.
So as you have heard, it is diverse. It takes many forms, but the idea is that the pain and the psychological torture that the individuals, the culprits get is too much.
Alright, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. We'll be back after the break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
So unbelievable na yatenga byadala tekibadde easy yadde n'akamu bendera wagguluggula katuli beautiful yero wakasana kafenga kasuku red brotherhood eyatero bwetugatta
Tuchakale with Airtel today and celebrate 50 years of independence. Get up to 100% bonus to call across all networks. That's not all. Stand a chance to win a motorbike daily and a car every week. Simply top up every day. Get up to 100% bonus. Dial *162#. Press yes or OK. Start the 50 years independence celebration of Uganda today with Tuchakale from Airtel. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back to Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the campaign to eliminate torture in Uganda. What are the challenges ahead now that Parliament has put in place a law? Our guests tonight, Hon Stephen Bakka Mugabi, Vice Chairman of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, Mrs. Roselyn Karugonjo SEGAWA, Director of Monitoring and Inspection at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. That's a state body. And Ms. Patricia Nduru, Senior Human Rights Officer at the Uganda Human Rights Commission, the same place. You will call and contribute to this discussion. Patricia, can you talk to us about compensation when these people get through this and the perpetrator is brought to book? How do they get compensated?
Usually it's a procedure. So if it's and we have office, we have a registrar's office, so there's a procedure that you have to work with. You get the order, they'll extract the order for you, and you have it presented to the Attorney General in case it's the government, and if it's an individual, that's much easier. If it's an individual, so there is a system within the Ministry of Justice where they're supposed to have a first coming, first basis payment, which hasn't been that adequate, and from there you're supposed to get your compensation. But unfortunately, this has taken time. The money that has been given has not been adequate to the Ministry of Justice and also specifically to the victims of torture. So you have payments which are sometimes partial. They won't give you the full payment, but they'll pay you half that money, and some of it is still pending, and that is in our reports in regard to compensation. So that's the brief procedure. Others decide to have a lawyer to take it up from there, because it's very hard for you to investigate and complete your investigate, you're a person hearing it, and then you want to also execute. So some people have the lawyers taking up the case from the time you give them a judgment to getting them the damages.
Let's talk about the area, the old claims. Do you have any people who haven't been paid? People who haven't been compensated after they've been tortured? Do you have any?
Yes, we
Because the government has a record of clearing claims very quickly. Talk to us. Do you have any? Maybe they'll be cleared tomorrow.
Well, actually, we have our report points that we have claims that are outstanding. That's also inclusive of cases of torture.
How many days are those outstanding claims?
That's not days, it's years.
What do you mean? This government pays claims very quickly, compensation claims.
Well, I think you are varying that, and I'm saying something different according to what we have in our report. And what I'm saying is that the claims have been outstanding. That is, some of them, if I can remember, is not like from 13 years back. Because this is when, since the commission started, it has been hearing some of these matters, and awards have been given. So some have been outstanding as far back as that. Some have been partially paid, and the last time we were here, we were happy when the Parliament decided that this money needs to be paid. These are people who are vulnerable, who have lost life, who have lost limbs. So this money needs to be paid to them expeditiously. So that is where we are. We have been actually advocating for a victims compensation fund where money would be put and these people would get the access to their damages very quickly, but this hasn't yet come on board.
So the government can budget saying this year we expect to torture so many.
Well, I don't know if you can have a budget to that. No, what you budget, you see, no, listen, what happens is all damages at the end of the day, civil and etc. is supposed to be paid. So if you have any wrongs or torts or human rights cases, those people are entitled to be paid. Because justice, 13 years, I think it comes to nearly 4 billion. Nearly 4 billion Ugandan shillings. And justice, actually, at the end of the day, means that people should have should get compensated at the end of the day. At the end of the day, should get compensated to start somewhere.
Hon Bakka Mugabi, have the state agencies been facilitated to investigate some of these torture claims?
Before we go to the investigations, we as a committee, because the Human Rights Commission is under the Committee on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, yes, we have been grappling with that figure of 4 billion compensations. That one combined with court awards, we now have a figure of around 250 billion shillings.
Really? Court awards?
Yes. So we have a big problem with the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We have been telling them why can't they separate, because when this one is combined with court awards, it gets lost in there. And yet these are small, some of them, these are people who have suffered. Sometimes they have been amputated, they lost their livelihoods, and they just need 5, 6, 7 million, sometimes 20. They are combined with compensations of 140 billion to a one man, for example, in the case of Harbour. So we are trying to sort it out. We have put government on pressure and on notice that we need to sort this issue once and for all. We know government is cash strapped, but compensations must be addressed, and the Human Rights Commission is aware about our efforts in that direction. Now, the issue of investigating torture still falls under the ambit of Human Rights Commission. They have not been well facilitated, that's the truth. Their budget is not big. Their working conditions are not good either. Right now we are trying to find good premises for them. They are situated on the Uganda Road.
Yeah, we know that.
If you go there, you will find that it is in a very sorry state. But we are trying to ensure that they are housed better, but most importantly to enable them get enough facilities financially, but also staff, to ensure that they investigate these issues, because most of these issues go to them and they have the mandate to investigate and compensate and award compensations to the affected victims. So it is true they are not well facilitated, but we are getting there. We must thank the donors, because they do most of the bulk of funding the Human Rights Commission.
Right.
But our budget has been increasing over the years, and we are going to to maintain that for the many years to come.
All right, let's talk about rehabilitation of victims. Roselyn, is that something that's provided for in your processes?
Rehabilitation for victims ideally should be provided by a state. Unfortunately, as we stand, rehabilitation is mainly offered by civil society organizations. But under the bill, in particular under Clause 6, on compensation, rehabilitation or restitution to be made by court in certain cases, the court is allowed to it can make orders for rehabilitation, and this order can be made against the government or whichever perpetrator, including medical and psychological care, which is really crucial for a victim of torture, and for legal and psychosocial services to the victim in case of trauma. The bill also provides for restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, and payment, and those kinds of things. Rehabilitation has been difficult. Some of it would be possible if the awards were paid, because for the record, no amount of award can never repair somebody's, can never restore their lives back. Someone has lost their spinal cord. No amount of money will give them the spinal cord or the functions that they are to do. But some of the money would be used for rehabilitation, so that these people could be able to restore some of their bodily functions that they've lost, in case they lost, in case they've lost limbs, maybe I've forgotten the word. Those kinds of limbs, and some kind of psychosocial support. Some of that money can provide that, but when it's not paid and it is paid in piecemeal, it leaves the victim hanging. Fortunately, the African Center for Rehabilitation of Torture Victims, with whom we've worked closely, does provide some kind of rehabilitation for torture victims, but that's limited within the funding that they receive, and this is a civil society organization. That's why it's really crucial for the government, for the president to actually assent to this bill, so that some of these things can actually become a reality, that rehabilitation may become a reality, or at least one step towards a reality in the torture victims' lives.
And how do you assess these claims? How do you arrive at a figure?
How do you arrive at a figure? There are procedures. There are precedents. There are high court decisions. There are also human rights decisions, which say that if say you lost a limb, you're entitled to.
So they come to your office, they can knock out with a figure, a claim. They come to your office and they report.
No, you cannot get the claim right after
not the money, but they can look out with the figure saying at some stage they'll pay me.
Most people really just want compensation and rehabilitation. They won't put a figure per se.
What I mean is, if someone came to report to you like they do, or they want to do, would they walk out after a couple of days of investigation? Would they have a figure from your office, or do they have to find?
No, they won't get a figure until the tribunal, determines that.
What's the process?
Reporting a complaint of torture or any human rights complaint doesn't mean because you've reported it means it's factual or it has been proved.
Give us the process.
So, after you report, investigations take place. Investigations entail putting the allegations to the respondent institution. The respondent institution replies. It's analyzed. Our team will go out to investigate, look up at the local registers if this person, mainly state, was detained in this institution on those dates, how long they were detained, find out if the allegations being made about certain officers are true, and whether such officers were really working at that place at that time. So it's those kinds of investigations where you thoroughly investigate the matter, ensuring that you're not just giving
something you dreamed of.
Yeah, something you dreamt of just because you came and complained that you were tortured. That doesn't mean you are actually tortured. You have to produce some kind of evidence, even medical evidence, that you were tortured. because if you are tortured,
well, psychological torture might not happen.
Yeah, psychological torture is difficult, but there are also psychologists and other medical personnel that can assess that kind of suffering.
They can examine
Yes.
and gauge the level of torture.
Yes.
That would be an interesting one. Let's talk about the officers who torture juniors because they have orders from above. In the police, they have the chain of command and the army. How are they going to deal with that? Will the law protect them? If a man rebels against his senior, he might be fair.
He's actually protected. The law says that if you disobey, because an order to torture is an unlawful order under this law. An order to torture, is an unlawful order. So, if you disobey such an order, the law protects you. However, if you obey such an order and you go ahead to perpetrate torture on an individual,
you are in trouble.
You cannot claim superior orders.
Right.
Because that was an unlawful order.
And suppose you disobey an unlawful order.
Yes, if you disobey
you're transferred to Nakapia from Kampala country. What happens? Does the law protect you?
Of course, the law does not get too deep into
but that's something you expect
protection for transfers and things like that. But you
victimization.
Yes, victimization. But if there are reprisals of that form, I think that officer is also entitled to what? To report. Because it's at the end of the day, it's a human rights issue. It's an issue of discrimination. It's an issue of reprisal. It's after disobeying an unlawful order, and it's not justified unless the transfer can be justified. And not every transfer is a punishment in any case, because most people who work in some of these public institutions, your appointment letter always says you can be transferred to work in any part of the country. So you would have to prove that this transfer has a lot to do with your disobedience of lawful orders. However, if say you were dismissed or demoted,
that's different.
That is a serious issue, and that would be a human rights issue. You can seek redress from the Human Rights Commission or from the court.
If they take away some allowances.
Yeah, you can seek redress.
Alright, this is Spectrum listeners on radio, and you can call in now. Our number is 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Spectrum, hello. Please say your name. Hello, please switch off your radio and then talk to us. Your name? Samuel, we'll hear you live on air. Go on.
Alright.
Samuel, can you walk away from your radio or turn it off? Hello?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, how are you?
Very well, thanks. Your name? Ahmed, you're live on air. When you call it, please switch off your radio, tell us your name and then proceed.
Yeah, I wish you...
Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
Edmond.
Good evening, your name, sir? Sunny, welcome. Can you switch off your radio, Samuel? It's failing. Can you switch off your radio and then talk to us?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Talk to your radio. Walk away from the radio, please.
Okay, I can't hear you now.
Go on.
Yes?
Alright. Samuel, you're live on air, go on. Yes, Samuel, please go on now.
What
Spectrum. Okay, let's get back to Studio Roselyn.
I'd like to thank all those that have called in. I think we should start off with the last caller.
Samuel, yes?
Yes. I don't. Yes, it was Samuel. Samuel said he was tortured, and his case came in 2002, and up to now he hasn't got justice. I think it would be great to, to examine why up to this point you haven't got justice. But I must let you know that, of course, we've had problems we have a kind of backlog. There was a time we went without commissioners for a while. We've been limping without two commissioners. When commissioners retired, retired to pursue other goals, we had less members of the commission to hear cases. Now we've got two new members of the commission. So if that is happening, it's regrettable, but we would want to know the exact details. If we had his surname and case number, we could really explain.
Would you like him to come and talk?
Yes, to explain particularly what could have gone wrong.
Would you like him to come tomorrow?
If possible, yes. Yes, please. Let him come and we really get to the bottom of why that could have happened. That delay is too long.
10 years.
Yes, it's too long. And I think he has every right to complain.
The file got lost.
No, it cannot get lost. If he complained, let him bring his documents and let us examine them and get to the bottom of why it has taken him 10 years to do that.
Do you still have 10-year-old documents?
Yes, we do.
In the archives or in the active documentation?
If it has not, unless his file was closed, unless investigations revealed that it wasn't credible, then it would have been closed. But even then, you would have been informed. But what we've had with the problems we've had with complainants, they don't leave their addresses. Sometimes their phones are off. So sometimes it's hard to keep up with a complainant to update them on their case. But surely 10 years, you should be able to walk into the office of the chairperson and see what's going on. You have the right to do that, and I encourage you to do that. If you don't walk into the office of the chairperson, walk into the office of the registrar, of the director of complaints, investigations and legal services, or even I will be available to actually look into that matter. He spoke about police conducting investigations by themselves. The police have a professional standards unit, which actually conducts investigations. They do have mechanisms of investigating each other, and they can they can investigate. But a constable definitely cannot investigate a general who has tortured.
Let's take another caller. This is an important topic. Spectrum, hello? Hello? We seem to have lost them. Let's go on.
Yes, as I was saying, of course, if the person who committed the offense is a general, surely the investigation must also have somebody at that level. At that level, you understand? Yes, somebody, the equivalent of the one in the investigating institution, should be the one to kind of undertake that kind of investigation. So there will be no way that a constable would investigate a general. All I wanted to say is that the mandate to investigate human rights violations has not gone away from us. We will investigate incidents of torture, and where we find that somebody has been tortured, we can order for compensation, and where we find overwhelming evidence, we can refer the file to the Directorate of Public Prosecutions for criminal proceedings. So the Human Rights Commission will still remain relevant in terms of trying to get a civil remedy for people. There was a caller who spoke about, I forgot his name, about Ahmed talked about the responsibility of a superior action. Talked about a subordinate officer who takes the orders from above, and they were saying, why don't we punish the superior? And the in clause 10, the superior officer has a responsibility over actions of a subordinate. So that situation is covered. If the superior knew or consciously disregarded information which clearly indicated that the subordinate was committing or about to commit an act of torture, they would be held responsible. Right. If the acts of the subordinate are committed and they were within his responsibility and control, he's liable. As I said before, if he fails to control what's happening within his authority, his jurisdiction, he has committed a crime. And under Section 8, any person who directly or indirectly procures, aids or abets, finances, solicits, incites, recommends, encourages, harbors, orders, renders support to commits the offense. Right. So that person is covered.
So in other words, the junior officer who gets the order from the senior officer is responsible. But the senior officer also, who is aware that torture is happening in his unit, is also responsible.
And that senior officer who actually orders, encourages, recommends or incites is also in
Let's talk about safe houses just before we go. Do we still have safe houses, Patricia?
Do we still have safe houses?
Or they've been completely gone, a thing for the museum history?
Well, according to our reports, we said that we did not receive complaints.
You no longer. When was the last time you received them?
Listen, 9 complaints.
When? How old are they?
I think it was 2011.
So you still receive complaints about safe houses?
9 complaints of people saying I've been detained in these places, whatever. There's no,
And when you go there, they open their doors.
You see,
the issue is, if someone says I was detained in a place in this area, it may be very difficult. Maybe that person
sometimes they're taken in the night.
And Edmond, what I want to say, I don't condone the act of safe houses, but in practically, these security agencies cannot operate without safe houses. But I think
with or without snakes,
because safe houses are supposed to be safe, as the word is, because they are not supposed to be snakes and torture in those safe houses. So if we find out that a certain safe house there is torture, that's where we should be concerned.
Well, thank you very much indeed, our dear guests. Honorable Stephen Bakka Mugabi, Vice Chairman of the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Thank you for coming, Spectrum, sir. Mrs. Roselyn Karugonjo SEGAWA, Director of Maintenance Inspection at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And Ms. Patricia Nduru, Senior Human Rights Officer of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. Spectrum will be back tomorrow.
Thank you.
Everybody wins.